This 98-year-old man fought for a Nazi unit in World War II, and he got 2 standing ovations in Canada's parliament. This happened during Ukrainian President Zelensky's visit last Friday. Now, Canada's Prime Minister Justin Trudeau has called the incident shameful.
Obviously, it's extremely upsetting that this happened. This is something that is deeply embarrassing to the Parliament of Canada and, by extension, to all Canadians.
It was House Speaker Anthony Rota who introduced Yaroslav Hunka to Parliament as a war hero who fought against the Russians in World War II.
He's a Ukrainian hero, a Canadian hero, and we thank him for all his service. Thank you.
Jewish advocacy groups later pointed out that Hunka fought in a Ukrainian unit which served under the command of the Nazis. Members of the division were also accused of killing Polish and Jewish civilians.
As a descendant of Holocaust survivors whose majority of her family walked into Auschwitz-Birkenau, and only my grandfather and his brother walked out, that I think this hurt all of us in Parliament.
Anthony Rota has since apologized.
I'm deeply sorry that I've offended many with my gesture and remarks.
Hill.
The Speaker of the House took the fall, and the Prime Minister continues to blame everyone else. A full-blown international embarrassment for our country, for our allies, and for everything this nation did to defeat the Nazis. An actual Nazi invited to the House of Commons, welcomed and celebrated as a hero, and a government that vetted everyone here. Shame. The PM has called Canadian citizens Nazis. Will he muster the courage and stand up on his feet today and take responsibility?
The Honourable Government House Leader.
I think we all feel the deep embarrassment and shame of what happened on Friday. Had anyone in this House known what the Speaker was going to do ahead of time and who this person was, I am certain that not a single person would have stood in this House of Commons. But the fact of the matter is, and my Conservative colleagues know this, that neither the Prime Minister nor the government nor the Ukrainian delegation or any parliamentarian in this place knew ahead of time. It was the Speaker's decision. He's taken responsibility and he has resigned. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
It seems that what has really antagonized most Canadian Conservatives, as well as the Canadian population, is the fact that Justin Trudeau seemed to be quite fine with letting the Speaker of the House, Mr. Rota, take the fall, and has still, to this day, not offered an official apology or taken any blame for the scandal.
Obviously, it's extremely upsetting that this happened. The Speaker has acknowledged his mistake and has apologized. But this is something that is deeply embarrassing to the Parliament of Canada and, by extension, to all Canadians. I think particularly of Jewish MPs and all members of the Jewish community across the country who are commemorating Yom Kippur today. I think it's going to be really important that all of us push back against Russian propaganda, Russian disinformation, and continue our steadfast and unequivocal support for Ukraine.
But what is of interest to me, and most likely to my viewers following the Ukraine war, is the question of whether Mr. Trudeau's decision to deflect in his speech after the scandal and blame Russian disinformation and propaganda. Even Elon Musk, the CEO of Twitter, thought that this was a bit ridiculous. So my question is it propaganda by the Russians? After all, we know that Putin said in his February 2022 speech that he came into Ukraine to
і денаzification України.
Я воював 17 років, я укроп, я нацист, да, я воював проти ДНР.
Українці чи росіяни?
Там, я не назву тих людей українцями, а вони нам не потрібні. Коли українські танки зайдуть в Донецьк, вони будуть знищені.
Так можна тоді припинити вже зараз війну, якщо вона...
Ні, їм потрібно їх знищити. Їм потрібно їх знищити.
Ukrainian political activist and militia member sat before his party's flag, leaving little doubt about his readiness for action. The flag, however, depicted two axes crossed against a field of bread. Yes, Yuri Hudimenko said he is ready to take up arms, but not necessarily against Russia. As the leader of Democratic Acts, one of dozens of right-wing or nationalist groups that represent a potent political force in Ukraine and are fiercely opposed to any compromise with Moscow, his anger will be directed, and I quote, at Ukraine's government if it grants too many concessions in exchange for peace. Mr. Hudimenko says in his interview with the New York Times journalist, and I quote, if anybody from the Ukrainian government tries to sign such a document, 1 million will take to the streets and that government will cease being the government. So then I ask, when Mr. Hudimenko referenced 1 million people taken to the streets, does he mean 1 million Ukrainians who think like him? That is, 1 million Nazis?
Що ти з його кинув? Андрійко! Ти чого з його кинув? Бери булочку, чекай, я вкушу. Андрій, ну давай ще раз. Єбать ти з його кинув, бро, хорош.
The article published at the beginning of the invasion continues like this. Ukraine's president has a few cards to play in any talks with Moscow. Perhaps his strongest is the threat of an insurgency by nationalist groups like Democratic Acts and even the more influential right sector in the event of a Russian invasion. Recently, the article says, the government urged the nationalist parties to arm themselves heavily in preparation for the invasion. But the groups are a two-edged sword, threatening not just the Kremlin, but also the Ukrainian government, which could be rocked and possibly overthrown by them if Mr. Zelensky agreed to a peace deal. So, my friends, we are now in a war where neither side is willing or ready to negotiate peace terms, and the West, who is backing Ukraine as its proxy, is clearly losing the war. And a loss for the West would undoubtedly be devastating and humiliating. So I ask, where is this path taking us? It might be worth looking at this video next for a possible answer.